It was a day that began like any other at the interstellar outpost, a place known for its harmony between species. Families traveled from distant planets to experience the diversity and learn about each other's cultures. Among them was a human family visiting for the first time. They were excited, curious, and perhaps a little nervous, knowing that this station was not like anything back on Earth. Their child, barely old enough to walk steadily on uneven surfaces, held tightly to one of the parents' hands. Looking around with wide eyes at the alien architecture, the strange creatures moving gracefully, and the soft hum of technology in the air, the child had always been fearless, full of energy and curiosity. While the parents tried to keep a careful watch, it was nearly impossible to anticipate every sudden movement. Children have a way of slipping through attention, especially in a place filled with so many distractions. A flash of shiny metal, a moving figure, and the child's hand wrenched free. In a heartbeat, the child wandered toward an area clearly marked for security personnel. The area was supposed to be off-limits to visitors, but the signs were written in multiple alien languages, none of which the child understood. An alien officer stationed there noticed immediately. This officer had a reputation for strictness, a no-nonsense figure among his peers. He had seen travelers make careless mistakes before, but rarely did it involve children. His species valued discipline above all, and patience was not his strong suit. When he saw the small human approaching the restricted zone, he reacted instinctively. A sharp gesture, a firm voice ordering the child back, these were normal. But for some reason, perhaps a flicker of frustration or fear, the officer struck. The moment it happened, everything seemed to freeze. The child stumbled, crying out in surprise and pain, while the parents rushed forward, hearts pounding. The crowd that had been watching the daily routines of the outpost gasped. No one had expected an act like this. Children were sacred to humans, and even other species, though they might not understand the same level of attachment, were shocked by the display of sudden violence. The parents reached their child quickly, scooping them up, checking for injuries. Tears streamed down the child's cheeks, mingling with fear, confusion, and pain. The officer, realizing immediately that he had crossed a line, froze in place. His hand still lifted slightly in mid-air, the expression on his face a mix of shock and regret. Around him, other aliens began murmuring, some stepping back cautiously, unsure how to react to humans in such moments of crisis. The human family felt a rush of emotions, fear, anger, protectiveness. But their instincts first focused on the child. The child's small body trembled in the parents' arms, and gentle words and touches were all that could soothe the initial panic. The cries began to soften as the child clung to the parents, still frightened, but reassured by their presence. In that moment, the parents realized they had to stay calm. They needed to show the child that the situation was under control, even if internally their minds raced with anger and disbelief. The surrounding humans, seeing the incident, immediately gathered. Travelers, workers, and even a few diplomats stepped closer, forming a loose protective circle around the family. They were quiet at first, letting the family attend to the child, but their eyes communicated the same message. This act would not be ignored. Humans have a strong instinct to protect their young, and here, in front of multiple species, that instinct was visible, calm, but undeniable. Some of the onlookers began taking notes, recording the incident, not out of malice, but to ensure that truth was preserved. Evidence mattered, especially in situations where misunderstandings could be claimed. The child's cries had drawn attention from across the nearby area, and the murmurs of concern grew louder. Aliens who had been walking past stopped, unsure what they were witnessing. Some were sympathetic, some confused, and some apprehensive. For a moment, the entire outpost seemed to hold its breath. The alien officer, meanwhile, struggled with his emotions. He had never intended to harm a child. His actions were automatic, the result of years of training to enforce rules strictly. But instinctive reactions did not erase the reality of what had happened. He glanced around at the growing human crowd and sensed the seriousness of the situation. Humans were rarely passive in such moments, especially when a child was involved. He realized that this could escalate quickly if not handled carefully. The child's parents, after a few tense moments, stood and addressed the officer quietly but firmly. They spoke in measured tones, emphasizing the need for accountability. Their voices carried authority not because they were angry, though anger was there, but because they were focused on the child's safety and well-being. Around them, the crowd of humans nodded slightly, a silent show of solidarity. Their presence sent a clear message. They were united, and they would ensure this incident did not go unexamined. Nearby, aliens watched carefully. They had never seen humans react in quite this way before. Some species are quick to shout or demonstrate aggression, but humans had a different style. They were calm, controlled, yet their protective instincts were unmistakable. Their unity was evident, and even without words, it communicated strength. The alien officer understood that his reputation, his career, and even the trust between species were at stake. Medics from the outpost arrived quickly, drawn by the child's cries and the gathering crowd. They carefully examined the child, checking for bruises, scrapes, or worse. The parents stood close, answering questions calmly and giving the medics every detail. The child's tears gradually slowed as gentle reassurances and kind words soothed them. Even the officer, still shaken, watched silently, realizing the consequences of a single impulsive moment. As the crowd dispersed slightly to give space, the parents held their child close. They whispered comforting words, stroking the child's hair, and slowly guiding them toward a quiet corner where the child could recover from the shock. The rest of the humans lingered, forming a respectful, protective presence. It was a display of communal care, a reminder of the human instinct to protect the vulnerable. By the time the first formal reports were being drafted, it was clear that the incident would not fade quietly. Witness statements, visual recordings, and immediate reactions would all play a role in the next steps. The human community at the outpost, though not seeking confrontation, had made it clear that justice and accountability were necessary. They had not acted out of anger alone. They acted out of responsibility and the deep, unwavering need to protect one of their own. The alien officer remained in place, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. For the first time, he understood the unique nature of humans, their unity, their protective instincts, and the consequences that could follow when a line was crossed. He knew that this was more than an isolated mistake. The reaction of the humans would shape his future interactions, his training, and the policies of the outpost itself. And as the family slowly began to feel a sense of safety again, the larger crowd of humans remained alert, ready to act if necessary, but hopeful that calm and fairness would guide the next steps. The child, holding tightly to the parent's hand, looked around with curiosity slowly returning to their eyes. Despite the fear and pain, a sense of trust began to rebuild. The lesson of the day was clear. Humans are relentless in protecting their young. And even in the vastness of space, that instinct cannot be ignored. This day, which had started like any other, would be remembered by everyone present. The incident, though brief, had revealed something profound about human nature. Their resilience, their unity, and their protective instincts had been displayed openly, not with aggression, but with purpose. It was the first chapter in a story that would ripple through the outpost, shaping relationships, policies, and understanding between species for years to come. Even as the sun-like lights of the station shifted with the rotation of the outpost, and life slowly returned to its regular rhythm, the humans lingered in quiet vigilance. They were determined that their child, and by extension all children of their kind, would be safe. And the alien officer, standing quietly, realized that a single moment of action had far-reaching consequences. The world, it seemed, was watching closely, and humans never forgot when one of their own was harmed. The news of what had happened spread across the outpost almost immediately. In a place where species from multiple worlds lived, worked, and traveled together, word traveled faster than any official announcement. The human family's distress, the child's cries, and the sight of the alien officer striking a human child had not gone unnoticed. Within minutes, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations turned into a gathering of concerned humans. Humans were known across the galaxy as Deathworlders, a nickname that hinted at their resilience, toughness, and unwillingness to back down when their own were harmed. This reputation was earned over centuries of surviving harsh worlds and impossible situations. But it wasn't just about survival. It was about standing up for what was right, and most importantly, protecting the vulnerable. And right now, a vulnerable child had been harmed. That fact alone was enough to draw humans together in a quiet, steady, determined unity. Small groups began to form near the site of the incident. Some were workers from the station who had seen the act, while others were travelers who had been nearby. They spoke in hushed tones at first, trying to piece together exactly what had happened. But even as they shared what they knew, a shared understanding emerged. This could not be ignored. There was no anger in the way they moved or spoke, at least not outwardly, but there was an unmistakable firmness in their posture and expressions. A few of the humans who had witnessed the event most closely stepped forward. They had already begun documenting the incident on their devices, recording the officer's actions, the child's reaction, and the parent's immediate response. They understood the importance of evidence. In a world filled with multiple species, misunderstandings could happen easily, and there were always those who would attempt to twist the story. But here, there would be no misunderstanding. Every detail was being preserved. Meanwhile, the alien officer's superiors had started to arrive at the scene. They looked around nervously, noticing the growing number of humans and the serious expressions on their faces. They tried to calm the situation with polite words and gestures, but they underestimated the power of human unity. Humans do not need to raise their voices to be heard. Their presence alone communicates resolve. The mere fact that so many had gathered without chaos or violence told the aliens that this was serious. The child's parents remained at the center, gently holding their child while answering questions and explaining the child's condition. They made it clear that the child was physically recovering, but emotionally shaken. They also emphasized that while they were upset, they were focused on ensuring that such an incident would never happen again. Their words were calm, measured, and firm, carrying the weight of parental concern. This approach resonated with the surrounding humans, who nodded quietly in agreement. Other species watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Some had heard stories of humans' protective instincts, but seeing it firsthand was different. They noticed how humans communicated silently, their body language conveying a message that words could not capture. We will not allow harm to come to our young without consequences. The outpost, usually filled with daily routines and peaceful coexistence, now held an air of tension. It was a quiet, controlled tension, the kind that demanded attention and respect. A few humans stepped forward to speak directly to the alien officer. They did not shout or threaten, but their words were precise and pointed. They made it clear that striking a child was unacceptable and that accountability was necessary. The officer listened, a mixture of shame and apprehension crossing his face. He realized that this moment was bigger than him. It was about respecting life, understanding differences, and recognizing the human instinct to protect their own. Meanwhile, medics and station officials began a more thorough assessment. They checked the child once again, ensuring there were no lasting injuries. The child, still frightened, clung to the parents, finding comfort in their touch. Humans around them offered assistance, quietly handing tissues, supporting the parents, or simply standing as a reassuring presence. It was not an act of aggression, but a demonstration of care and solidarity. As the hours passed, the crowd of humans grew. Some had arrived after hearing the initial whispers, and their curiosity quickly turned into concern. They joined the protective circle around the family, ensuring that no one would attempt to interfere or dismiss the incident. Their presence was quiet but powerful, a living statement that humans did not allow harm to go unanswered. Even aliens who had witnessed the gathering were impressed, recognizing the strength and discipline in the human response. Discussions began to emerge about how to proceed. Humans spoke about the need for a formal report, for transparency, and for a fair investigation. They wanted to ensure that justice was served and that similar incidents would be prevented in the future. But there was no desire for revenge or humiliation. The focus was entirely on accountability, responsibility, and safety. This approach highlighted a crucial aspect of human culture. When one of their own is harmed, humans act not only out of emotion, but also with a sense of reasoned duty. News of the incident reached other parts of the outpost. Officials from different species convened quietly, trying to understand the magnitude of the situation. Some had never seen humans act this way before. The calm yet firm stance, the focus on protection without aggression, and the meticulous attention to documenting events all conveyed a message that could not be ignored. It was clear to everyone that humans were not a species to be underestimated, especially when their young were involved. The parents, seeing the growing support, felt a mixture of relief and pride. Relief that so many were standing with them, and pride in witnessing humanity's protective instinct manifest so visibly. They knew that this would send a message not only to the alien officer, but to the wider community. Humans value life, and especially the life of their children, above all else. As the day continued, humans began coordinating with station officials to ensure that a formal investigation would take place. Witness statements were collected, video footage was compiled, and medical reports were finalized. Every action was aimed at creating a clear and transparent record. It was not just about holding someone accountable. It was about setting a precedent for safety and respect across species. Even as the immediate crisis settled, the energy among the human observers did not fade. They remained vigilant, ready to support the family further if needed. Some stayed simply to offer quiet companionship, others to provide guidance and assistance for the next steps. There was no chaos, no unnecessary shouting, only a steady, determined presence that communicated strength, unity, and care. By evening, the alien officer had been removed from immediate duties while the situation was assessed. He stood quietly, reflecting on his actions and the reaction of the humans. He realized that this was a defining moment, not just for him personally, but for his understanding of human culture. Humans' protective instincts were not merely a stereotype, they were a lived reality, one that demanded respect and careful consideration. The child, now slightly calmer, was still in the parents' arms, but beginning to show glimpses of curiosity once more. Gentle smiles, soft words, and careful movements helped rebuild the child's trust in the environment. Even among aliens, a few approached cautiously, offering gestures of kindness that were accepted hesitantly. It was a slow process, but the first steps toward emotional recovery had begun. As the station's lights shifted with the rotation of the outpost, the human family remained at the center of attention, not for spectacle, but for care and protection. Humans had demonstrated, without aggression, the power of unity and the depth of their instincts. They had turned a moment of shock into a lesson for everyone present. Harm to one of their young would not go unanswered, and justice would be pursued calmly, but firmly. By the end of the day, a plan was in place. A full investigation would begin, led by representatives from both humans and aliens. Policies would be reviewed, and the safety of all children at the outpost would be a top priority. The human community, though tired from the emotional intensity of the day, remained resolute. They had shown the power of presence, of care, and of unwavering protection. And they had done so in a way that would be remembered by all species at the outpost for years to come. Even in the quiet hours of the night, humans continued to watch over the family from a respectful distance. It was not about intimidation, but about ensuring that no one felt alone or unprotected. The outpost had returned to its routines, but the lessons of the day remained vivid. Humans, when united, were a force grounded in care, resilience, and justice. And for one small child, the world had shifted slightly, showing that there were beings who would stand up for them, no matter what. Even as the sun-like lights of the outpost shifted, casting soft shadows across the metallic floors, the humans who had gathered around the family refused to disperse. They remained close, watching, listening, and ensuring that no harm could come again. What had started as shock and panic had grown into determination. Humans had a way of standing firm when their values were challenged, and today, it was clear that protecting their young was a value that could not be compromised. The child's parents were at the center of attention, holding the child carefully, but they were not alone. Around them, humans began coordinating quietly. They spoke in low tones, discussing what steps should be taken next. Some were engineers, others medics, and a few were simply travelers who understood the importance of recording the truth. Everyone had a role, and everyone knew the goal: ensure that justice would be served, and the safety of the child would never be questioned. The first step was documentation. Humans pulled out small recording devices, capturing every detail of the scene, every word spoken, and every movement that had led to the incident. They were thorough but discreet, making sure not to alarm the child further. Evidence mattered because it was the foundation for accountability. In a place with multiple species, misunderstandings could easily be claimed. Humans knew this and were determined that the truth would be clear. Medical personnel were next. They carefully examined the child again, making sure that even minor injuries were noted. The child, though still trembling slightly, allowed the medics to check for bruises and scratches. Gentle hands and soft voices reassured the child, and the parents were grateful for the care and professionalism. This was another way humans ensured that their young were protected: thorough care, attention, and vigilance. Meanwhile, a small group of humans approached the alien officer. They spoke calmly, firmly, and without anger, explaining why his actions had caused distress and fear. They emphasized that this was not about revenge, but about responsibility. The officer listened, realizing that humans could be uncompromising in their principles, but still fair in their demands. Every word the humans spoke carried weight, not because it threatened the officer, but because it represented a collective understanding of justice. Other species watched carefully, some surprised, others curious. Humans had a reputation, yes, but witnessing it firsthand was different. The calm authority, the unity, and the focus on protecting a child without resorting to violence sent a clear message. Humans could be formidable when it mattered. Their presence was enough to make even seasoned alien officials reconsider their approach. The parents decided to speak publicly to the surrounding crowd, addressing both humans and aliens. They explained what had happened, describing the initial shock and the child's fear. But they also highlighted their gratitude for the support they had received. Their words were calm, heartfelt, and powerful. The crowd listened in silence, feeling the weight of responsibility and the seriousness of the situation. There was no shouting, no exaggerated gestures, only honesty and clarity. As the day wore on, humans began to organize into a support network for the family. Some stayed with the child to provide comfort, while others coordinated with medics and officials to ensure the investigation would proceed smoothly. Everyone understood that this was not just about one child. It was about setting a precedent for the safety of all humans at the outpost. Their actions were deliberate, careful, and coordinated. The alien officer remained in the background watching. He could see the difference between humans and other species he had encountered. Where others might react impulsively or with anger, humans acted with purpose. Their unity was not built on fear or intimidation, but on shared values and responsibility. It was a different kind of power, one that demanded recognition and respect. Throughout the afternoon, the humans who had gathered shared their observations and evidence with the family. Video recordings, witness statements, and detailed notes were compiled. They wanted to ensure that nothing would be dismissed or overlooked. It was meticulous work, but it was necessary. Humans valued transparency and accountability, and they would not allow a single moment of injustice to be forgotten or ignored. Some humans took on the role of mediators with the alien authorities. They spoke calmly, explaining what the humans expected: a thorough investigation, proper accountability, and measures to prevent such incidents in the future. They emphasized that this was not about punishment alone, but about understanding, learning, and ensuring that the safety of children, human or otherwise, was always a priority. Their words were persuasive because they were rooted in principle and delivered without malice. Even as tensions remained, the presence of humans created a sense of order. Other species in the area began to respect their approach. Humans were not demanding violence, and yet they were firm. They did not threaten or intimidate, but their coordinated actions made it clear that they would not back down until justice was addressed. Their unity became a silent force, more powerful than any raised voice or weapon. The child, noticing the calm yet determined presence around them, slowly began to relax. Humans around offered gentle smiles and reassuring words. Even small gestures, a hand on the shoulder, a soft pat, a kind glance helped rebuild the child's trust in the environment. This careful attention to emotional recovery highlighted another aspect of human resilience. Their focus was not only on justice, but also on care and compassion. By evening, the humans had established a system to oversee the ongoing situation. Some stayed with the family to provide emotional support, while others worked on organizing witness reports, medical records, and visual evidence. Their efforts were coordinated, methodical, and deliberate. Every human present understood their role and the importance of their actions. The child's parents observed all of this with quiet pride and gratitude. Their family was supported, not just by officials, but by a community of humans who understood the value of unity and protection. Throughout the night, discussions continued. Humans spoke quietly with station authorities, explaining why every step needed to be documented and transparent. They emphasized that this was about more than one incident. It was about building trust, ensuring accountability, and preventing future harm. The authorities listened carefully, realizing that humans were not simply reacting emotionally. Their actions were reasoned, purposeful, and grounded in principles that could not be ignored. The alien officer, reflecting on the day's events, began to understand the depth of human values. He had acted impulsively, but he now saw the consequences not just for himself, but for the wider community. Humans were not quick to anger without reason, but they were unwavering in defending what mattered most. Their approach was measured, their unity was formidable, and their protective instincts were undeniable. By the time the station's lights dimmed to signal the end of the operational day, the humans had accomplished something significant. They had formed a protective circle around the family, ensured that the child was cared for, documented every detail of the incident, and communicated clearly with alien authorities. All of this was done without aggression, without chaos, and without losing focus on the well-being of the child. The parents, watching the humans around them, felt a deep sense of relief. Their child was safe, supported, and understood, and they had witnessed humanity's protective nature in action. It was a powerful lesson, one that the child would grow up learning even if they did not remember the day in detail. Humans, as a community, had shown that they would stand firm, act responsibly, and protect their own God. As the humans began to slowly disperse, they did so in an organized manner. Some stayed close to the family, while others returned to their routines, confident that the family was safe and that the next steps would be handled properly. Their presence had made an impression on everyone present, aliens and humans alike. The day had demonstrated not just protection, but accountability, unity, and compassion in equal measure. Even in the quiet moments after the chaos had subsided, the humans remained vigilant. They knew that this was only the beginning of a larger process, one that would ensure justice and understanding. But they also knew that their actions had set the tone. Humans would not ignore harm done to their young, and they would act with calm determination and clarity. For the alien officer, the lesson was clear. He had underestimated humans' protective instincts, their discipline, and their ability to act as one. He realized that true power did not lie in force alone, but in unity, responsibility, and unwavering attention to what was right. The day had changed his perspective, and likely the perspectives of many around him. By nightfall, the family finally found a quiet moment to rest. The child, still clinging to the parent, drifted into sleep under the watchful eyes of humans nearby. Their calm presence continued to provide reassurance, a silent promise that they were not alone, that their safety was a priority, and that justice would be pursued responsibly. And as the station settled into its evening rhythm, humans continued to plan, coordinate, and protect, not out of aggression, but out of care, principle, and unshakable resolve. The events of the day would leave a lasting mark on the outpost, demonstrating the unique strength of humanity, the ability to protect, unite, and act decisively, all while The following morning, the outpost was unusually quiet. The incident from the previous day had left its mark on everyone present, and the station was buzzing in subtle ways. Humans, known for their resilience and determination, were already moving into action. They knew that the first step after an event like this was ensuring that a proper investigation took place. It was not enough to simply react in the moment. Accountability required evidence, witnesses, and transparency. The human family, still protective of their child, remained at the center of attention. The child had slept fitfully during the night, unsettled by the memories of the previous day. The parents were calm but vigilant, knowing that the next steps were crucial. Humans around them were ready to assist, some offering emotional support, others coordinating the collection of facts and testimonies. Every action was deliberate, every decision guided by the need to ensure justice. Station officials had begun organizing the investigation. It was a multi-species task, as the outpost prided itself on collaborative governance. But humans quickly made it clear that they would take an active role. Witnesses from the human group were ready to provide detailed accounts. Medics had prepared reports on the child's condition, and even travelers who had seen the event were willing to contribute. The goal was not punishment, but truth. The alien officer, still visibly shaken, was brought into a separate area to provide his account. He knew that his actions had consequences, but he had not fully understood the scale of human unity until now. Humans were not merely reacting emotionally. They were systematic, careful, and unwavering. The officer gave his report cautiously, aware that every word was being recorded and scrutinized. His species valued authority, but here he realized that authority alone could not override human insistence on fairness. Immediately began reviewing the evidence. Video recordings captured the child's approach to the restricted area, the officer's reaction, and the child's fall. Witness statements described the moment in vivid detail, noting the officer's body language, the child's expression of fear, and the parent's immediate response. Medics added information about bruises, scrapes, and emotional distress. Every piece of information was carefully compiled, creating a clear timeline of the incident. The investigation was meticulous. Humans insisted on thoroughness, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. They knew that misunderstandings between species could complicate matters, so clarity was essential. The alien officer's superiors listened as humans explained why the documentation was necessary, why each statement mattered, and why accountability was not optional. The humans' calm, precise communication impressed the aliens. They were firm without aggression, unwavering without hostility. Throughout the morning, discussions emerged about how to handle the officer. Some alien officials suggested minor disciplinary actions, hoping to avoid escalation. But the humans were clear. This was not about retribution. It was about responsibility and future safety. The child's experience could not be ignored, and neither could the precedent it set. Humans were not interested in revenge, but they demanded that the incident be acknowledged fully and addressed fairly. As the day progressed, more humans joined the investigation. They assisted in verifying facts, cross-checking witness accounts, and ensuring that the child's well-being was prioritized throughout. Emotional support remained a focus. Even while facts were being collected and statements taken, humans continued to reassure the child with gentle words, soft touches, and kind smiles. The child's initial fear began to ease slightly, helped by the calm and persistent presence of humans who had come to protect and support them. The alien officer watched all of this, recognizing a pattern he had not anticipated. Humans operated with a balance of care and firmness. They did not shout. They did not raise their hands in threat, but their organization, precision, and unity carried power. Even without aggressive actions, their presence demanded attention and respect. The officer realized that this investigation was a lesson not only in accountability, but also in understanding human culture, especially their protective instinct for the young Dot. By midday, the human group had compiled a detailed report. It included timelines, witness testimonies, medical observations, and video recordings. Each entry was carefully written to assure clarity, avoiding exaggeration while emphasizing the facts. The parents, while exhausted, approved every statement, ensuring that the child's experience was accurately represented. The humans' methodical approach left no room for misinterpretation. The Outpost Council convened a formal meeting to review the evidence. Humans were active participants, presenting their documentation clearly and calmly. They explained the sequence of events, highlighted the impact on the child, and emphasized the importance of taking steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. Alien officials listened carefully, impressed by the clarity, honesty, and precision of the human approach. The humans' goal was not to dominate the discussion, but to ensure that justice was transparent and effective. As the investigation continued, tensions subtly rose. Some aliens were uncomfortable with the level of scrutiny humans demanded. They were not used to being challenged so directly, especially in front of witnesses from multiple species. But the humans remained composed. Their focus was unwavering: accountability, safety, and fairness. Their calm insistence diffused hostility while simultaneously reinforcing the seriousness of the situation. During the investigation, humans also paid attention to the emotional state of the child. They noticed subtle signs of stress-clenched fists, rapid blinking, and quiet sobs, and responded immediately. One human crouched at the child's level, offering comforting words and a hand to hold. Another provided a small toy or distraction, helping the child regain a sense of normalcy. The balance between documentation and care was carefully maintained, showing the human's deep understanding of both procedure and compassion. The alien officer, who had initially underestimated human response, began to reflect on the broader implications. He realized that the human's approach combined empathy with accountability in a way that commanded respect. Their insistence on fairness, coupled with their unwavering protection of the vulnerable, created a dynamic that could not be ignored or dismissed. The officer's understanding of humans shifted. He now saw them not as unpredictable or impulsive, but as principled and powerful in their unity. By evening, the investigation had reached a critical point. Humans had ensured that every piece of evidence was reviewed, every witness heard, and every concern addressed. Recommendations were made regarding both the officer's conduct and future safety measures for children in the outpost. Humans stressed that any resolution should not simply punish the officer, but also prevent similar incidents in the future. Their focus remained on safety, responsibility, and accountability. The parents observed the proceedings, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. Their child had been cared for, protected, and validated, and the humans had demonstrated a remarkable ability to balance firmness with compassion. They realized that this day, difficult as it was, would be remembered not just for the incident, but for the human determination to act responsibly and protectively in moments of crisis. Even as the formal investigation wound down, humans remained vigilant. They continued to provide emotional support to the child, guidance to the parents, and careful oversight of the process. Their presence ensured that the officer's actions were addressed transparently, and that no steps were overlooked. Their commitment to fairness and protection was unwavering. The alien officer, now fully aware of the consequences of his actions, accepted the findings of the human-led investigation. He understood that his behavior had caused harm, not only physically but emotionally, and that the human's response was justified. He had learned a valuable lesson about the weight of responsibility and the seriousness with which humans protected their young Dot by the end of the day. The investigation had not only clarified the events of the previous day, but had also set the tone for future interactions. Humans had demonstrated that they would act decisively, yet responsibly, to protect their own. They had shown that accountability was not a threat, but a principle. Their unity, careful planning, and compassion had left a mark on everyone present. Ensuring that this incident would serve as a lesson for all species at the outpost. As night fell, the child finally rested, supported by the parents and surrounded by the calm presence of humans nearby. The outpost returned to its regular rhythm, but the impact of the day's events lingered. Humans had proven that they could navigate complex, multi-species situations with both firmness and empathy. Their approach had ensured that justice, safety, and understanding were upheld. And as the lights of the station dimmed, the humans quietly reflected on what had been accomplished. They had preserved the truth, protected the child, and established a standard of accountability. Their actions had been deliberate, careful, and deeply human. The incident had shaken the outpost, but the human response had turned a moment of crisis into an example of principle, compassion, and unwavering determination. By the next morning, the outpost was alive with a different energy. What had started as an unfortunate incident had now grown into a moment of serious accountability. Humans, known for their resilience and protective instincts, had made it clear that the matter could not be ignored. Their presence, calm but firm, reminded everyone that when one of their own was harmed, justice was not optional. The child's family, still shaken but supported, was at the center of attention once more, surrounded by humans who had committed themselves to seeing the situation through. The alien officer, who had caused the harm, had been called to a formal hearing. The atmosphere was tense, but humans had ensured that it remained orderly. No one shouted. No one acted aggressively. Yet the sense of seriousness was palpable. Humans had a way of communicating their determination simply by being present, by standing united, and by demonstrating unwavering focus. The alien officer noticed this immediately. The calm, resolute presence of humans was more intimidating than loud anger. It spoke of principles, patience, and strength. The parents of the child were at the front, holding their child gently. The child clung to the parent instinctively, still wary from the previous incidents. Humans surrounding the family offered quiet support, reassuring the child with soft words and gentle gestures. Even without speaking aloud, the humans' unity sent a powerful message. They would not let harm go unanswered, and they would ensure the child was safe at all times. As the hearing began, the humans presented the compiled evidence. Video recordings, witness statements, and medical reports were laid out clearly and calmly. Each detail was explained: the child's approach to the restricted area, the officer's reaction, the resulting fall, and the child's fear and distress. Humans spoke methodically, making the case not out of anger, but out of responsibility. Every word reinforced the truth of what had happened, and every gesture demonstrated their commitment to fairness. The alien officer attempted to explain his side. He spoke cautiously, aware of the gravity of the situation. He admitted that his actions were impulsive, that he had not intended to harm the child, and that he now understood the seriousness of the outcome. Yet humans did not simply accept words. They demanded accountability. They explained that intent alone could not erase consequences. Actions, especially when they caused harm to the vulnerable, needed to be addressed and corrected. Other species in the hall watched with growing respect for the humans. They had observed the previous days, had seen the careful documentation, and now witnessed the firm yet fair presentation of evidence. Humans were not seeking to dominate or shame. They were demanding that justice be done properly and transparently. The presence of multiple humans, all calm and focused, made it clear that this was not an isolated concern. It was a reflection of human values, principles, and protective instincts. The council, composed of representatives from various species, listened intently. They asked questions, reviewed evidence, and considered the testimonies carefully. Humans answered each question clearly, providing context where needed, and emphasizing the importance of learning from the incident. The child's emotional well-being was highlighted, showing how deeply this event had affected the family and the broader human community. By mid-morning, the council was ready to announce the consequences. Humans had requested that the officer be held fully accountable, not in a vengeful way, but in a way that would prevent future harm. The council agreed. The officer was removed from immediate duties, required to undergo retraining, and placed under supervision. Additionally, the officer would make a formal apology to the child and the family, acknowledging the impact of his actions. Humans had ensured that the consequences were not just personal, but systemic. They demanded improvements in station protocols, particularly regarding the safety of children and other vulnerable beings. New rules were introduced for security personnel, emphasizing restraint, awareness, and empathy. Cross-species training was also mandated to prevent misunderstandings in the future. Humans were clear. This was not about revenge, but about building a safer, more responsible environment for everyone. The child, witnessing the proceedings from a safe distance with the parent, began to relax slightly. The parent offered gentle encouragement, and humans around nodded with reassurance. Even small gestures, a smile, a soft word, a reassuring hand, helped the child understand that they were safe and protected. Humans had not only enforced consequences, but had also nurtured a sense of security for the child. Throughout the day, the humans maintained a balance between firmness and compassion. They spoke to the officer respectfully but clearly, demonstrating that responsibility mattered. They supported the family, ensuring the child's needs were met and that the parents felt empowered. They also communicated with other species, explaining why these steps were necessary and highlighting the importance of protecting the vulnerable. Their approach was educational as well as corrective, showing that accountability could be applied with fairness and understanding. By afternoon, the hearing concluded and the council formally issued the findings. The officer accepted the outcome with a solemn nod, understanding that this experience had changed his approach to authority, responsibility, and care. Humans had achieved what they had intended. Justice had been served, safety measures had been reinforced, and the child's well-being had been prioritized. The outpost, observing the proceedings, now had a renewed understanding of human values. Humans were not impulsive or violent without cause. They were principled, protective, and united. Their insistence on fairness, accountability, and care left a lasting impression on everyone present. Even aliens who had initially been skeptical of human involvement recognized their strength, not in aggression, but in purpose and unity. After the hearing, humans accompanied the family to a quiet area of the station to ensure the child could rest and recover. The child's expression slowly brightened, reassured by the familiar, calm presence of humans who had consistently protected them. Parents expressed gratitude, both for the immediate support and for the broader demonstration of human care and unity. The child was safe, but more importantly, the child felt protected and valued. Humans remained nearby, even as the immediate proceedings ended. They wanted to make sure that the officers' retraining and supervision would be carried out, that new protocols would be implemented, and that the child would continue to feel secure. Their vigilance was not about control or dominance. It was about responsibility and community. Humans understood that protection was ongoing, not a single act done by evening. The outpost had returned to its routines, but the impact of the day was visible. Humans had demonstrated the importance of accountability, compassion, and unity. The incident had been transformed into a lesson for all species. Protecting the vulnerable, documenting truth, and enforcing fair consequences were essential in maintaining trust and safety. Humans had not just ensured justice for the child, they had set a precedent for future interactions across the outpost. Even as the station lights dimmed, humans continued to provide support quietly. Medics checked in on the child, parents were reassured, and the officer began his retraining. The message was clear. Mistakes would be addressed, accountability was essential, and the protection of the young and vulnerable was non-negotiable. Humans had delivered consequences not through anger or violence, but through organized, principled action that respected both justice and empathy. The child, gradually settling into a sense of normalcy, smiled faintly at the human presence. Small gestures, a comforting hand, a gentle pat, a reassuring look communicated safety more effectively than words. The parents, observing this, realized the depth of human unity and care. What had begun as a moment of fear and distress had evolved into an example of how humans handle responsibility, protect their own, and enforce consequences with fairness and compassion. By nightfall, humans had ensured that all immediate measures were in place. Security protocols were updated, retraining schedules for the officer were confirmed, and new safety procedures were drafted. The child's well-being was monitored, the parents were supported, and the outpost community had learned an important lesson about human principles and protective instincts. This day, difficult as it had been, marked a turning point. The humans had demonstrated that their strength lay not just in their ability to act, but in the way they acted, with clarity, purpose, and care. They had ensured that consequences were delivered, lessons were learned, and safety was reinforced for the future. The child, the family, and the community of humans had experienced a profound example of protection and accountability, a true demonstration of why humans, the Deathworlders, could never be underestimated when it came to safeguarding those they loved. As the stars outside, the outpost glimmered faintly. The humans quietly reflected on the day. Justice had been served. Care had been provided. Accountability had been enforced. And most importantly, a child had felt safe and valued. It was a victory not of force, but of principle, unity, and unwavering humanity. Days passed slowly after the incident, but the effects were still felt throughout the outpost. Humans remained present, quietly observing, offering support, and making sure the family felt safe. The child was slowly returning to normal, exploring familiar areas with curiosity and cautious confidence. Every small smile, every tentative step, was a sign that the child felt protected again. Humans had shown not only strength in enforcing accountability, but also patience and care in helping the child regain trust. The alien officer, now under retraining and supervision, was making visible efforts to learn from the experience. He attended sessions where empathy, awareness, and restraint were emphasized. Humans occasionally observed from a distance, not to intimidate, but to ensure that the lessons were internalized. They wanted to be certain that the future would be safer for all children in the outpost, and that mistakes of this nature would not be repeated. The parents, still vigilant, began allowing the child to engage with the environment more freely. They encouraged gentle interactions, sometimes with the officer, sometimes with other aliens, to show that the world was not entirely dangerous. The humans around them guided these interactions carefully, offering reassurance and setting boundaries when necessary. Every moment was about rebuilding trust, both for the child and for the family. Other species in the outpost noticed the change. What had initially been a moment of tension was now becoming an example of cross-species learning and understanding. Humans were demonstrating how accountability could be enforced without hostility, how care could be balanced with firmness, and how unity could create positive change. Aliens who had been skeptical began to approach the humans with cautious respect, asking questions about how they managed conflict, accountability, and protection. Education became a central focus. Humans worked with station officials to provide training for security officers, medics, and even other species who might interact with children or vulnerable individuals. The lessons were simple but profound. Observe carefully, react responsibly, and always consider the impact of your actions. Humans shared their experiences calmly, without judgment, emphasizing learning over blame. The goal was not punishment, but understanding, improvement, and prevention. The alien officer gradually improved under this guidance. He began to understand that authority was not just about rules or enforcement. It was also about responsibility, awareness, and empathy. He learned to pause before acting, to consider the effects of his decisions, and to communicate more effectively with beings who were different from him. Humans monitored this progress quietly, intervening only when necessary, showing a balance of vigilance and trust. Meanwhile, the child was slowly regaining confidence. Humans and the parents worked together to create safe spaces where the child could play, explore, and interact without fear. Each day brought small victories: a laugh, a game, a conversation with another child or alien. These moments were celebrated quietly but wholeheartedly, because they represented the recovery of trust and the effectiveness of care. The broader community of the outpost began to change as well. Humans, by standing firm yet fair, had set an example for conflict resolution and accountability. Other species started to adopt similar approaches in their interactions, realizing that respect, transparency, and consideration could prevent misunderstandings and accidents. The presence of humans had become a stabilizing factor in the station, reminding everyone that protective instincts and responsibility mattered deeply. The parents of the child expressed gratitude often, not just for the immediate support, but for the long-term lessons provided by humans. They saw firsthand how accountability and empathy could work together, how fairness could be enforced without aggression, and how trust could be rebuilt after harm. They also realized the power of community, witnessing humans come together not for confrontation, but for support, protection, and guidance. The child began to play more openly, exploring areas of the outpost with curiosity and cautious confidence. Humans and parents watched closely, ready to step in if needed, but allowing independence when it was safe. Each successful step reinforced the child's sense of safety and demonstrated the effectiveness of human care and guidance. The child began to understand, in small ways, that the world could be safe again and that humans, as a community, would protect them. The alien officer, who had once acted impulsively, began to interact with the child under careful supervision. His gestures were gentle, his words measured. Humans observed closely, ready to intervene if necessary, but slowly, trust began to form. The officer began to understand the responsibility inherent in authority, especially when dealing with the young and vulnerable. The child, with encouragement from parents and humans, slowly accepted his presence without fear. Station officials noted the improvement and began to implement broader protocols based on the human-led example. Policies for child safety, cross-species interaction, and accountability were updated. Training sessions for officers emphasized empathy, awareness, and restraint. Humans provided guidance in designing these programs, ensuring that lessons learned from the incident were embedded into the fabric of the outpost. The impact was lasting. Systems were changed, and behavior was influenced positively. As weeks went by, humans continued to maintain a quiet presence. They did not need to intervene constantly, but their availability and vigilance reassured the family and the child. The parents allowed the child to engage more freely, confident that humans had created a safe environment and would intervene only if necessary. The child's laughter returned more frequently, mingling with the sounds of the bustling outpost. The alien officer, now more aware and careful, became an example of change. He learned to approach situations with mindfulness, to pause before acting, and to communicate clearly. His interactions with other species also improved, as he began to respect the principles humans had demonstrated. Humans did not seek to control him, but ensured that his lessons were internalized, fostering a safer environment for everyone. The incident, once a moment of fear and harm, became a story of growth, unity, and lasting change. Humans had enforced accountability, protected the vulnerable, and ensured that lessons were learned by all. The outpost became a safer, more respectful place, demonstrating that strong principles and careful guidance could turn crises into opportunities for improvement. The child, now more confident, began to interact with other children and even young aliens under supervision. Humans provided guidance in these interactions, modeling careful behavior, gentle communication, and respect. Each small success reinforced trust, both in humans and in the broader community. The child's world was slowly returning to normal, but with the knowledge that protection and care were always present. The parents reflected on the journey with gratitude and amazement. They had witnessed humans act with a balance of firmness and compassion, enforcing accountability without aggression and nurturing recovery without haste. They saw the power of unity, vigilance, and principle in action. They understood that humans' protective instincts were not just instinctual, but deeply tied to their sense of responsibility and justice. As the outpost settled into its daily rhythm, humans continued to leave a quiet mark. Their approach to conflict, care, and accountability became a model for cross-species interaction. Aliens began to adopt aspects of human methods, realizing the effectiveness of measured, principled action. Trust between species grew stronger, and the child's safety was never in question again. By the end of the story, the child was laughing freely, playing without fear, and exploring confidently. Parents felt secure. The alien officer had learned his lesson, and humans remained a steady presence in the background. The incident had caused fear and tension, but through unity, care, and accountability, humans had turned it into an example of strength and compassion. The outpost had learned something important. Accountability, protection, and understanding were powerful tools. Humans had demonstrated that mistakes could be corrected, trust could be rebuilt, and communities could become safer and stronger when guided by principle. Their presence had left a lasting impact, and the child's recovery was the most visible proof of their care. As night fell, the lights of the station reflected off the metallic walls, soft and calm. Humans, quietly observing, ensured that the family was safe and supported. The child slept peacefully, parents reassured, and the alien officer, now more mindful, reflected on the lessons he had learned. What had begun as an unfortunate incident had become a story of growth, unity, and lasting understanding. Humans had acted not out of aggression, but out of principle. They had enforced consequences, nurtured recovery, and ensured accountability. They had demonstrated the strength of unity, the power of compassion, and the importance of vigilance. And in doing so, they had not only protected a child, but had also set a standard for how justice and care could coexist, leaving a legacy that would be remembered in the outpost for years to come.